All right, we come to the book of Ruth, and most historians credit Samuel with writing the book of Ruth, although there's nothing really conclusive that indicates that. But just historically, they think that Samuel wrote it. The date is sometime shortly before David's reign, which would put it somewhere between 1011 and 971 BC. So in that 40-year range. The key verse we're going to say is verse 16 of chapter 1. Chapter 1, verse 16, where Ruth gives her famous pledge to her mother-in-law, Naomi. She said, "Do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you, for where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." And verse 17, she goes on, she says, "Where you die, I will die." Now, this is interesting when you look at 16 and 17. This is Ruth's pledge to her mother-in-law, Naomi. Remember the story. Naomi had married a man by the name of Elkanah, and they left Jerusalem to go to Moab, which is on the east side of the Dead Sea. So you're getting a picture. Here's Jerusalem, and then here's the Dead Sea right here. And so down on that lower right side of the Dead Sea is where they went to the Moabite country. They had two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. And in due time, Mahlon and Chilion married Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. And over time, Elkanah died, Mahlon and Chilion died. And so here are three widows now. And Naomi tells her daughters-in-law, "You go back home. Go back to your own people." But Ruth said, "Don't tell me to leave." And she says, and here's what she said: "Go. Wherever you go, that's where I'll go." Now she is committing every step of her life to being with Naomi. Where you lodge, I will lodge. There's not going to be any luxury when they're traveling, and even when they get back to Jerusalem. Elkanah wasn't a wealthy man. And then she says, "Your people will be my people." She's giving up her own identity. She's leaving behind her Moabite history, and she's saying, "I'm going to be identified with you, and your God will be my God." She's changing her theology. She was a pagan Gentile, so she's leaving all of that behind and committing to worshiping Jehovah. And where you die, I will die. This is full surrender to her mother-in-law, Naomi, and full surrender to God. So there's a fascinating pledge, and it's a fascinating story to read the book of Ruth. The book's title is taken from the name of the main character, and her name comes from the Moabite and Hebrew word which means friendship. Ruth comes from the word that means friendship. And you see that friendship and the commitment that was involved in the friendship. Now, there are 7 distinct themes. I've listed them for you. We're not going to spend a lot of time with that. But first is God's redemption that extends beyond the Jews to the Gentiles. Here was Ruth, a Moabitess, and she receives the redemption that God offers. Second, women were co-heirs with men of God's saving grace. This reminds us of Paul in Galatians chapter 3 and verse 28, where there is no distinction, bond or free, male or female. There's no distinction in Christ. We're co-heirs. Third, Ruth portrays the virtuous woman. The virtuous woman that we read about in Proverbs 31, if you're familiar with Proverbs 31. But here's how we know she was a virtuous woman, is in chapter 3 and verse 11. Chapter 3 and verse 11, it says, "You have shown your last kindness to be better than the first." And then he says, "Now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you whatever you ask. You are a woman of excellence." Chapter 3 and verse 11. You're a woman of excellence. Number 4, God's sovereign, and providential care is seemingly unimportant to people. You read the story of Ruth, a lot of people will read the story and say, wow, there's just one circumstance after another, after another, after another. The circumstances changed and everything turned out good just because the circumstances changed. No, the things turned out good because God is able to take evil and turn it to good. God takes even bad things and turns them to good. Romans 8:28. Number 5, Ruth stands in the genealogy of the messianic line, the line of the Messiah, which, by the way, we're going to look at Sunday, Lord willing. But along with Tamar and Rahab and Bathsheba, they become 4 Gentile women who are included in the line of Jesus Christ. Number 6, come in. Boaz is the Kinsman-Redeemer, and he is a type of Christ. We see all sorts of types in the Old Testament. You see the type of heaven in the temple. You see the type of the sacrifice of Christ in all the sacrifices of the animals. So we see all kinds of types throughout the Old Testament, and Boaz is a type of Christ. And number 7, David's right to the throne is traced back to Judah. You'll remember Judah was the 4th born son of Jacob, but it was through Judah that the Messiah came. You'll remember in Revelation, I believe it's Revelation 5:22, Jesus is called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And so this is the messianic line coming through Judah. There's a structure for the book, and it follows the chapters, so it's really easy to see. In chapter 1, Ruth displays loyalty in her decision to stick with Naomi and to follow her wherever she would go. This is a picture of love's choice. Love's choice. Naomi didn't have to stay. Ruth didn't have to stay with Naomi. Naomi told her and Orpah to go back to their homeland. And Orpah stuck around for a while, but eventually Orpah said, okay, I'm going home. Notice it's Orpah, not Oprah. It's Orpah. We knew a lady in Lexington, Orpah. But Orpah decided to go back to Moab. Ruth stayed. It's a picture of love's choice. Chapter 2 shows us Ruth's labor and her service to Boaz, this wonderful man. It's a picture of love's response. Love's response. Ruth was able to respond to his kindness. She was able to respond in a favorable way. Chapter 3 tells of Boaz's love and the rest that he granted to Ruth. And that's a picture of love's security. Love's security. We are secure in Christ when we come to him as our Redeemer. And so we've come to the Lord. He has chosen us and given us faith to choose him. It is a response that we come to him to serve him. It is security because he is our Redeemer. And chapter 4 gives us the lineage of David to Christ. The lineage of David and Jesus makes that connection. This is a picture of love's reward. Love's reward. Ruth and Boaz are rewarded for their faithfulness because Boaz becomes the father of Obed. Obed becomes the father of Jesse. Jesse becomes the father of David. And if you read Matthew 1, you're going to find that David becomes the father all the way down to Jesus. His line comes through David. Now, there are some truths that you can just, mark off in your brain and keep it there. Ruth, a Moabitess, was a descendant of Lot. A descendant of Lot. Do you remember that story? Do you remember when Lot was told by the angels, get out of the city of Sodom. You've got to leave. You've got to flee. This place is going to be destroyed. So Lot and his two daughters and his wife left. And what happened? She turned around and looked back and was turned into a pillar of salt. Her faith failed. So Lot now is in the hill country with his two daughters. And his daughters conspired together. They said, look, we're out here. There's no man that would ever have us. We're in a barren land. We're just nowhere. There's no hope for us. There's no way that we can pass on another generation. So let's get Dad drunk. And I'll sleep with him tonight, and you can sleep with him tomorrow night. Lot became the father of those Moabites. He became the father of Moab through his oldest daughter. And it was from the Moabites that Ruth comes. There's your background. Ruth's love for her mother-in-law was extraordinary. It was extraordinary. How many would leave their homeland, would go wherever their mother-in-law is going, would leave their people, would leave and forsake their God, would lodge where she lodged, and even die where she dies. Not too many would, but that's the commitment that she makes. It was an extraordinary love for her mother-in-law, Naomi. I've mentioned this already before up at number 6 under the 7 distinct themes, but Boaz is a picture of Christ. We said type earlier, but it's a picture. That's what a type is. A type gives you an illustration. It gives you a picture of something. And Boaz is a picture of Christ. He is, Boaz was from the family of Judah by Rahab. You remember Rahab? She was the harlot in the city of Jericho who welcomed the spies and then helped them escape. So Boaz is a picture of Christ, even with that family line. Now, a kinsman-redeemer, you're going to read about that in chapter 3, that a kinsman-redeemer was someone who had the right to the property or the right to the family inheritance and the right to the family line. And so this is what we find out, that, and we'll look there in just a minute, because Boaz was the kinsman redeemer. He was the close relative to Naomi, therefore the close relative to Elkanah and the close relative to Mahlon and Chilion. So he was the close relative, but we find out that there was a closer relative. There was someone else who was closer than he was. And so he went to the man and he said, look, you have the right of redemption. You can redeem Ruth, and you can redeem the family line. You can redeem the family land. It will all be yours. And the guy said, okay, I'll take it. He said, the day you take that right, you also take Ruth. And the guy said, I can't do that. He said, I'm married. I've already got a family. He said, I can't do that. So the guy said, I'll give you the right of kinsman redeemer. And as they were sitting before all the elders of the town, the guy took off his sandal and threw it on the ground and said, there's the right. Because that's how they did it. That was the custom in the Middle East at that time. If you're going to make an agreement, you take your sandal off, and that seals the deal. And so Boaz becomes the picture of the kinsman redeemer, and there are 3 things about a kinsman redeemer. First, he must be willing. He must be willing to redeem them. And in chapter 4 and verse 6, he is willing. He says, I want to inform. He's telling the town leaders, he's saying, I want to let you know, I am willing to do this. Secondly, he must be a kinsman, which gives him the right to redeem. You can be willing to do something, but if you don't have the right, you can't do it. But he had the right to redeem as well as was willing. And then third, he has to have the power to redeem. In other words, the means. He had to have the financial wherewithal in order to be able to conclude the deal. And so he was able to do that. And in chapter 2, we read kind of a summary of Boaz and his relationship with Ruth, that he showed kindness to her because he had heard of her kindness to Naomi. And he wanted to show the same kindness. He wanted to show the same reward that she had shown in being kind to her mother-in-law. Now, how does this tie in for us? Well, Christ is our kinsman-redeemer, and he has the right to redeem us. He is our true kinsman. No one else has the right, but only Christ. He has the power to redeem because he is the Son of God. He is God incarnate, and he graciously is willing to pay the price. So Christ is our Redeemer. He's paid the price. We are redeemed. We are freed because Christ paid the price of our redemption. So this is a great demonstration of the redemption that we have in Christ Jesus. And chapter 4 and verse 22 ties up the whole reason that we look at the book of Ruth as it is connected with Jesus, the Messiah. Start in verse 18 of chapter 4. These are the generations of Perez. To Perez was born Hezron. Hezron was born Ram, and to Ram Amminadab, and to Amminadab Nahshon, and Nahshon Salmon, and to Salmon was born Boaz, and to Boaz Obed, and to Obed was born Jesse, and Jesse David, the great king, the king of Israel. And again, it was from David's line that Jesus descended. And we will see, again, Lord willing, Sunday, we'll see how that line continues all the way to Jesus. I've given you a few things to remember, just a few. We've already mentioned a couple. Naomi was married to Elimelech of Moab. Her other daughter-in-law was Orpah. Elimelech was from Jerusalem. He was from the tribe of Judah. Again, now that's how Boaz had the right of redemption, because he was of the same line, the same tribe as Elkanah. Naomi, after she got back home, she wanted to be called Mara. Mara means bitter or bitterness. Because she had had so much bitterness in her life, she didn't want to be called Naomi anymore. She wanted to be called Mara, because my life has been miserable. Naomi and Ruth returned to Bethlehem. That's where they had started, or where Naomi had started. Boaz was also of the tribe of Judah and Elimelech. Transactions were legal when they gave the sandal. I mentioned that. And Judah was Boaz's great, 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 great grandfather. This is how it all worked out. So it's a great story, a great account of Boaz, the kinsman redeemer, a picture of Christ, our Redeemer. And we give thanks to the Lord for that.